One, you guys are
Welcome.
live.
All right, we're live. This is Wall Street Beats. Another fun day in paradise, boys and girls. This is day 26 of the war. As someone who was there on day one, I cannot believe it's month. It's almost a month. I'm joined by my buddy David Maris and our oil expert Bob Morris. How are we doing today, guys?
Good.
Doing all right. I'm going to repost this while we're talking.
All right, repost it. Get the people out there watching it. Bob, let's start with you. Where are we at today? Oil's back up.
Yeah. It's sort of the obvious. We don't have any tweets from Trump this morning saying that they've got a deal in hand and that things are going to go his way. And we talked about this on Monday, where it was very unclear and vague as to what really who he was talking to, and the fact that you still had public executions and bombings and missiles flying and everything from Iran in the meantime. And since then, they've come out and said, no, there's no deal. And if there is a deal, we want these 5 things that are clearly non-starters from the other side of the situation. So it just seems like everything's still up in the air. And for that reason, oil's rebounding back up here today. You've got oil back $93 a barrel, Brent above $100 a barrel. So the market's basically saying, wait a minute, we don't see what's going on here, that there's any deal near term. There's no ceasefire. We don't know exactly who it is you're talking to. We don't know what this big gift was that they sent you that you talked about. So that uncertainty is permeating the market here, with pushing oil prices back up and weighing on the overall market, raising fears of inflation and what happens with interest rates and so forth and so on, all the sort of things you traffic in, Ben. As far as the energy stocks, they're holding in. They were up yesterday for the most part on average, with oil down, and today with oil back up, they're up slightly, and some of the gas names are down to flat. So the stocks sort of seem to be taking this in stride. And again, we mentioned on Monday that these stocks tend to be valued off the longer term 12 to 24 month strip. And again, if you look out toward the December, January contract, we're still at around, we're actually up a little bit here, $76 a barrel. And we talked about, as long as that strip is out there around $75 a barrel, the stocks are still undervalued in my opinion, but that's sort of what they're looking at. So even if you've got these big swings on the front end of the curve, the back end of the curve tends to be hanging in there steady around $75 a barrel. And that's why these stocks are not making big moves concurrent with the big swings in oil prices, because they're looking at what the long-term price is and valuing these stocks off of where that 12 or 24 month strip is. So bottom line, and like I've been doing for the last several weeks, we're just holding tight here. I'm not doing anything as far as the oil lever names, the E&Ps, the integrated, holding on to my positions, not selling any covered calls, really not buying anything because I've got the positions I like. The one thing we noted early in the week is I've been nibbling at Baker Hughes, trying to build a position in that. We initiated a starter position in that and continue on down days to add to that name from a longer term perspective. So the only thing I'm doing in the market is continuing to nibble on Baker Hughes, holding on to our Schlumberger position, which I know you own, Ben, and we've talked a lot about. But otherwise, the situation is just, it's unclear what happens. It still seems that we don't appear to be anywhere close to a deal as far as, everything that's being said or what we see. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes in the back channels with, all the Middle East countries apparently talking to and calling and delivering messages to Trump. But, he was very clear that if there's no deal or something doesn't happen here by this weekend could be very interesting. They could unleash a fury of attacks and bombs again, which he has said he will do if they don't get smart here and come to the table and agree to some deal. So again, a lot of uncertainty here, and it's still at $93 a barrel. Where's the upside? And would I take the over, the under here on the very near term? I'm probably still more biased to the upside versus the downside. So, we'll see how this plays out, but a lot of uncertainty, a lot that is likely to happen over the next 3 to 5 days, depending on whether or not there is some deal struck.
So I have a question, Bob. So this is a kind of black swan is probably too extreme of what this could be. But if Saudi Arabia joins the war, okay, so what would you put the odds that happens? And the second is, what is that for the price of oil? Is that, hey, listen, we're going to go hyperbolic, or is it, no, actually it should go down because it shows at some point there'll be a resolution?
No, I think it's I give less than 50-50 odds Saudi joins the war. Now, I don't have any special insight or, on whether that happens or not, or what's going on with discussions there. But I think the conclusion is if other countries get involved, I think that raises the certainty that something's going to give on the Iranian side. I mean, if other people are getting involved, that means, I think, a higher probability that some resolution occurs sooner rather than later, because that just, puts more pressure on Iran, ratchets up the pressure and on them, and it doesn't give them much out. Now, the other side of the coin, and we've talked about in terms of black swan events from the very beginning, could, if the extremist clerics remain in charge or the Revolutionary Guard remains in charge, do they go with a scorched earth strategy? I mean, right now they don't seem to be very discriminatory in where they're sending missiles and what they're trying to bomb or attack, and it seems to be U.S. facilities and all the surrounding countries. But at some point, this is we said this is a holy war for them, and for the extremists. And do they remain in control and just go with a scorched earth strategy at the end of the day? If they have no choice, and it's sort of like we're
so
riding this to the grave.
Explain what you mean by scorched earth policy. Do you mean, hey, they send indiscriminate missiles to other neighbors, or are you saying their own production facilities?
Both. They start bombing oil facilities. They start doing whatever they can to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz and create as much chaos as possible. And I think that's a little bit of their strategy here too, is that, the longer or more they can prolong this, the more pressure it puts on U.S. and Israel to keep this up. If you read the headlines, it's becoming less popular in the U.S. As far as Trump has been mentioned. We're almost a month into this, and it doesn't look like it's going to be a quick, easy, done and over in 10 days. Certainly wasn't the case.
But it's interesting
so
you
I think
say
there's
that.
a little bit of this, them trying to put pressure to finally have other countries of the rest of the world or the U.S. come in and say, look, enough is enough. We got to stop this. This is just not going to be an endless war. And in the meantime, they're continuing to fire missiles. They're continuing to set off drones. And if you read some of the stories this morning, these are a lot cheaper drones than what the U.S. and Israel are using to intercept them. And at some point you strain the resources of U.S. and Israel to continue to send $2 million missiles to take out $50,000 drones.
It's interesting because the polling was so mixed. There was an AP poll yesterday where something like 70% of people in the U.S. are extremely or very worried about gas prices. But then they asked the same question of, hey, how worried are you about Iran obtaining nuclear weapons? And something, a very similar amount, like 70%, said, yes, they're very concerned about that. So it's tough to reconcile those two things.
It is. I mean, and it's a big issue for Trump. You've got midterms coming up here later this year, and if this is ongoing for another month or 2 or 3, that's not good. And as far as opinion in the midterms, and that's why I think Trump is saying, look, either you come to the table, either we get something done, or come, this weekend we're going to bomb the hell out of you. I mean, if they don't come to the table, I think that's coming. He doesn't mess around. I mean, what he says, he means, and he doesn't want this to drag on. They want to just pull full force and get this over with, and bring whoever's in power to the table to get a deal done. And it's still not clear who he's talking to.
Yeah, every time I see those news stories, I think of the time that there's always, and I thought it was Russian, but there's always a radio joke host that calls up different like prime ministers or presidents and pretends to be another prime minister, and then they broadcast it. I'm hoping that we're not negotiating with some Russian-based DJ.
Well, the other thing you worry too is what he said on Monday. He said, look, I don't want to tell you who it is because that person doesn't want to be killed. And you don't want to come in tomorrow and say, hey, Mr. President, how are the negotiations going? And not so good. Our person got killed.
Yeah,
So,
you definitely don't want to get getting promotions are great. The last thing you want to do is be in the Iranian Republican Army and get a promotion at this point.
Mm-hmm.
so Bob, is there anything on the curve that looks interesting to you either way? I know oil vol's high. Do you think that would you be selling puts at some point, or would you sell calls, or where? Is there anything you would do, like just looking at the curve, like independent of stocks?
Not right now. I mean, there's just too much uncertainty. It could go either way. Like we've said, oil's not going back to $60 or $70 a barrel anytime soon. And I think the market reflects that. And I think the stocks know that. That's why when you get a big move down in oil prices like you did yesterday, the stocks really don't move down. And again, the risk is that something happens and drives the oil price even higher, and then the stocks continue to climb. I don't want to cap my upside yet. Yes, they've had a big move, but I'm not writing puts or calls either way right here.
Yeah.
Again,
it's a weird thing because, like, what my insight on this is that, and I like to call this Adult Swim, is all the traditional hedges aren't working right now. And so the only real hedge against this scenario is oil. So you wonder, like, how much energy upside is there that's from hedging, right? Because if my gold's getting banged and my bonds are getting hit, and I think bonds are getting hit, everyone thinks inflation expectations, but I think it's really a liquidity thing. Where's the money to buy the bonds? And so we need more premium. And then, it hits equities. And, even within equities, staples and that stuff isn't really doing its job. So it's a weird environment because when you see oil move this fast, your natural inclination is to say, hey, I want to fade it. But, like, given the situation, no one really knows. I think this is a paralyzed market right now. I don't hear anyone. Do you guys have either any conviction? Like, and I usually have conviction, and I don't have a lot of conviction here at all either way, to be honest. Like, I think the independent factors of the market are kind of negative. I think the labor market, I think the AI stuff is going to be a challenge in the labor market. I think the credit stuff, but, like, these are known things. So, the war is a known thing. So it's a weird. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we were talking right before the show, that it's politics and it's global events, and none of us have any edge on that. We know that it will eventually be over, but could it get very worse before it gets better? Absolutely. Could it be over relatively soon? Yes. Does that mean there's a snapback? Then you go through all the economic data. If there is a snapback snapback meaning oil prices drop, does that all of a sudden mean the market goes up? Or do we start looking at the other data of employment and the rest and what happens to rates? So we just turn our attention to something else. So there's a lot of crosswinds going on. I mean, you had asked Bob the question of, like, well, is there anything to do? And you thought that oil and gas was the only hedge. I will say XLV and XBI doing very well yesterday, doing very well today in a down market. Those are the two ETFs that are most of healthcare, meaning therapeutics healthcare. And one is XBI is the biotech, and XLV is overall healthcare. They're up today. Is it good to have some exposure to things that kind of set whatever prices they want and have a built-in market? Probably. In a time like this, it's like almost like gold in that they can print money even in bad times, and the attention is off the industry right now. So I still like those going forward, whether we resolve things or not. It's I think money is coming into it because of the war. Maybe that changes a little bit temporarily, but overall it's been under-owned. And but I hear you, Ben, which is, it's not a lot to do. It's not like you could go, well, this is the thing.
And the thing too is, if there's some sort of deal tomorrow, or say, look, we're going to open the Strait of Hormuz, maybe oil pulls back to $80 a barrel. That's still going to underpin higher inflation than you had 2 months ago or a month ago.
Yeah.
And this all plays into this affordability issue, and affordability is the key thing that's driving the politics. And if you look at some of these, what happened in Mar-a-Lago with the Democrat winning the Florida House seat. It was all about affordability, and so that's going to continue to be an issue. And again, oil's not going back to 60, so
Yeah.
that affordability is only getting worse. Even if we got a deal tomorrow, because oil's not going back to 60, maybe it goes to 80, maybe 75, but still prices at the pump are higher than they were a month or two ago, and that's putting more pressure on the average American as far as their spending in their budget.
And that's my view. My view is prior to the war, I was bearish, and everybody knows I own a bunch of credit default swaps. They've done well, but what I didn't expect is for interest rates to really blow out. And, I know there's this whole thing, Jay Powell's going to stay on, and I don't think it's a secret at this point that basically, he's trying to stick it to Trump, for Trump. This for Trump. Hey, I'm broadcasting live here, bud. And that's really distracted me. Basically that we're going to have a situation where interest rates are tight, oil's tight, credit spreads are tight, like independent of the war. And if you're saying, hey, the war goes away, well, if it's at 80 and gas is where it is, and there's refineries offline globally, it's not necessarily going to be a situation where there's going to be this magical comeback the way there was last year. And I think the market's been Pavlovianly conditioned by Trump taco, whatever, Taco Tuesday. And I don't see, we got that 200-point bump to start the week on Monday, right, at like 6 a.m., and they faded that. And now we're back, in the 6,500s in the S&P, and it's not falling apart. So it's just a weird situation where vol's high, so it's hard to hedge. None of the hedges are working, and now it's not as easy to buy oil now as it was before. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, maybe it is going to stuff that's special situations, or some of David's healthcare names that are not, biotechs, seem to be getting hit by the interest rates. So Dave, is there anything in biotech land that's kind of on sale that's interesting, has zero to do with war?
Not. I mean, all of them have nothing to do with war.
Yeah. I get it.
Part of the reason that biotech's been doing well is I mentioned yesterday that Merck announced they were buying a small biotech company, a $7 billion deal. And this just follows Lilly announcing a deal, I think, earlier in the week. Everyone's doing deals because money's relatively cheap. And if you're Lilly and you're printing money from obesity drugs, sitting on the cash doesn't make any sense. And gosh forbid you decide to give it back to shareholders. Doing M&A is fun, right? That's the Lilly head of M&A or business development. I'm going to get some of the numbers wrong, but he said he's seeing something like 10 deals a day, and a lot of deals are being rejected by companies. And I wanted to call BS on it because the firm that reported it, they're a legit reporting firm, so I don't. They interviewed him. Just think about that. You're not seeing 5 or 10 deals a day. You just can't. That's just not true. I mean, and so there's a big profile on him in a publication talking about that. But now we can imagine, two realities. It's true or it's not true. I happen to believe it's completely not true, and he's just talking up oh, look at how busy I am. I need more resources. And they were talking. This article was talking about how they've turned from obesity to become a player in oncology, and it's yeah, you can become a player in oncology if you're spending money out the yin yang. But all of that said and done, is there's a belief that M&A is going to solve a lot of stuff in healthcare, and that's gotten the XBI going. So I don't want to say all of it is just because it's defensive. That's why I mentioned the XLV, which is more pharma related. I like the underlying cash flow rather than the speculation of biotech. I own them both, but it is something to be aware of, that biotech's going up for 2 real reasons. One is that it's a kind of safe haven, not related to the war. In that respect, that's how it's a safe haven. But it is risky because it's all development stage, and part of it is going up because people have been spending money like drunken sailors.
Yeah, I guess what my point in that question is that there is always stuff to buy. There's always stuff to do. But I think right now you have to look a little bit low. And you know what the other solution could be? Just do work and learn more stuff, find new names, and like just think about future things to do, because it just might be one of those situations where there's not much to do right now because there's so much uncertainty that's irremovable. And, or, you know, I was talking with our partner Steve last night. If you guys have noticed, the poly market seems to be front running the S&P in the market. Maybe develop an AI agent to like just pick that off. Maybe that's the strategy.
Yeah, that's if you're an oil trader, the poly market's probably pretty good from what I hear.
Def.
No, you have heard that story, right? Of like someone who bought tons of oil futures right before we announced something like this.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm talking. That's what I'm referencing. It's the S&P futures and oil futures, and you know, the poly market has a bet by the same wallet that there'll be no, bunch of money too. Like there'll be no ceasefire by the 31st, and there'll be boots on the ground by April 30th. And then you see this tweet about how the poor millennials got screwed. Although I'm the oldest millennial, so where they moved the enlistment age from 34 to 42, which is like, why would you do that? Like, what's that about? You know what I mean? And so there's just a lot of little things that, like, if you want to believe one side, you can believe one side. If you want to believe, hey, this is not sustainable, Trump has the midterms, you can believe the other side. And I think that's where you get stuck in the middle, essentially.
Yeah, because you could look at it and say, look, if moving the 82nd Airborne is not like a little thing, like that's a major move. But everyone also knows that that's the kind of move you do if you want to negotiate and you want to pressure someone to think, oh, listen, we're going to do something. So you're right. You can see it either way. In general, if you don't know the next play, then you shouldn't be in the game. Like if you really don't know what's the phrase, if you don't know the angles, you're the one who's getting played. So that's from a movie, by the way, in case you want to look it up. But yeah, so that's kind of where I am. I did buy some of the S&P and some of the XLV and XBI, more of it in the last couple of days, but nothing major.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a difficult thing to sit on your hands, and like, people are not used to like prolonged, slow-moving periods of difficult markets. It's just, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's like the max pain is this drip, drop, where you can't really get back to business. Your stocks can't hold a bid, and people just kind of throw their hands up at some point. So I don't know. You guys got anything else for today?
No, it's tough. It's just there's so much uncertainty. You just don't know which direction to go. And it's to your comment earlier, I wouldn't fade oil here because I just don't know.
What's your best performing stock today? Let's see.
Today or year to date?
Just today.
Just today. I think utility, XL Energy, or American Energy Power. My best performing stocks today are all utilities.
My best performing stock is Match, which I pitched on the show in the summer of 2024 at 31, and it remains at 31. So it's more stable than bonds these days.
Yeah.
It's up 2% today.
Not paying much of a dividend though. So,
but no, they generate free cash flow. But yeah, they're buying back stock. To be fair, I think that's part of why it stays where it is. To be honest,
sometimes treading water is actually, right. I mean, looking at beating the market is everyone wants it to be, hey, the market's up and I outperformed. I beat the market on the upside, but preserving cash and beating it on the downside is just as important. So, my two.
I got Lyondell and Dow, two of my better performing names today.
What are they up?
Ish. More than 1%.
Oh, you guys, we've got to.
Oh no, you know what else I have? PBR. You don't need PBR, Bob?
No.
That's one of my energy stocks, and that has had a nice move here in this.
I thought it was Pabst Blue Ribbon.
But it's just this is the Petrobras of Brazil. I wanted to have a Brazilian stock, and that's like the only one I ever buy. And then it was like, hearing Bob just complain about energy and how there's nothing to do forever. I started buying those energy. We bought the Schlumberger in November, and I've added a few E&Ps, and I thought that was a good one.
If you're looking for Brazilian exposure, there's a really interesting one called Odontoprev. I've owned it in the past. I don't now. I should have, because from 1056 Brazilian to 1364 in just like off the bottom in January. But they do dentistry in Brazil, but a lot of not really telemedicine, but you'll go into the dentist, have x-rays done, they send it to a central place, and both using inexpensive radiologists or dental whatever technicians who can read that, they can prescribe what your treatment plan should be much faster and with much better results. And they're kind of like, they also do dental insurance. So they're sort of like the Delta Dental of Brazil. So an interesting one to look into if people are interested in dominant players in their markets.
All right. Well, I think that's probably it for today, boys. That was a good show. Everyone be safe out there, and don't get chopped around, and do some work. Come back and join us tomorrow. We'll be back here, same time, same place. I am Ben Bry. That is David Maris. That is Bob Morris. The three New Jersey oriented guys on the show. See you later.
Thanks, guys.